we have a must-watch breaking story regarding a former UnitedHealthcare employee who has broken her silence after working with Brian Thompson for years. Be crystal clear, this breaking story is not about his unacceptable vigilante assassination. This is about the country that we live in and healthcare, and this needs to be shared with every single American. I'm going to tell you about that story in just a few seconds and what she has to say, because you're not going to see this on mainstream media. But right before we get there, please understand this is related to Donald Trump and Elon Musk and every single thing you see going on before they even get in the White House in terms of the corporate oligarchy America that we are facing. Here's some quick insight before I show you the breaking story in just a couple of seconds.
This new brazen strategy in healthcare. It's responsible not only for those scummy loans, but also denying patients, like you and the people you love, the vital care that they need. So, who's the shadowy supervillain behind this plot to rip off both doctors and patients? It's America's largest insurer. Today we're looking at the massive power of UnitedHealthcare. Before we get into UnitedHealthcare's new strategy to shortchange doctors and patients alike, we need to talk about how they became America's largest insurer. Treating people within closed networks of providers, health maintenance organizations, or HMOs. HMOs were pitched as a way to curb America's exploding healthcare costs, which did not happen. The law suddenly made HMOs very popular and very profitable.
And they had hired UnitedHealthcare to manage the HMO. Physicians Health Plan is a nonprofit, but UnitedHealthcare is very much for profit.
Were the doctors happy? Was this a good system for them?
No, they were so unhappy that there was national news coverage that they were threatening to unionize. They were mad that they were being underpaid by UnitedHealthcare, saying it was barely enough to cover their overhead. They were also alleging a conflict of interest with the chair of the nonprofit Physicians Health Plan, who was Richard Burke.
And who ran the for-profit UnitedHealthcare?
Also Richard Burke.
Much of United's initial growth was enabled by the HMO Act and the $300 million in grants from the government. Burke and United started snapping up all of these federally subsidized insurers, essentially stealing entire taxpayer-funded organizations. And it makes a lot of sense that the bill was so helpful to UnitedHealthcare. It was written by a think tank, Interstudy.
Interstudy was founded by Paul Elwood Jr. He's this guy who's called the father of the HMO. But I also found another important figure at Interstudy. One of the directors was none other than Richard Burke.
At the same time, United continued to consolidate and spent billions acquiring other for-profit insurers. Despite their promises, healthcare costs continued to increase. But they were getting more efficient in one crucial way: rationing your healthcare.
So as you listen to this former employee, it's important for you to know three things. One, she uses the word rug that doesn't have the letter D in front of it for a reason. She also uses the word yusive without the AB in front of it, and she also mouths the color white. That's just for context so you understand occasionally a couple things she's saying she doesn't say out loud. Watch this former employee of UnitedHealthcare right here.
I worked for Brian Thompson in the Medicare department at UnitedHealthcare for almost 10 years, and I've compiled a list of just the top 5 wildest things that I experienced while working there, things they do not want y'all to know about. Let's start off strong with number 1. They terminated a guy on my team. The next morning, he snapped and unalived two news anchors on air and then was neutralized about 3 minutes from our call center because he was coming to finish us off. And UnitedHealthcare did not increase security, police presence, offer us any resources. All they did was pull us into a meeting to threaten us that if we spoke to the media that we would have be terminated and possibly face legal ramifications, kind of like they did with the CEO. They went right on with their meeting. No empathy, no compassion, no nothing. The next thing, they do not take women's safety seriously at all. I was actually harassed by my trainer, right? I reported it and I began getting retaliated against like there was no tomorrow. And you know what they did? They didn't suspend him. They didn't terminate him, even though that's how he lost his last job as a corrections officer for doing the same thing. No, they blocked him from emailing me and said that he would stay on his side of the floor, which by the way did not happen. And then he was given a raise and a promotion. Yes, baby, they are not equal at all. And God forbid, they take the person's side and they take the man's side. That is it. Okay? Nothing less, nothing more. The next thing, there was a guy who had been drinking all day. He was a member. He'd been drinking all day and was requesting female people. He kept getting me, then he kept requesting me when he called back, and he was describing in great detail how he was going to rape me, how he knew where I was working, went on into so many other things, and I'm a survivor, and it was visibly upsetting me. My boss made me stay on the call to get as much information as possible so they could terminate his benefits and report it to the authorities. Did any of that happen? Absolutely not. And when I finally disconnected the call, which I got in trouble for, by the way, they let me have three or 4 minutes to go get some water to calm down, because apparently water fixes the entire situation. The next thing, the rug dealing was out of control. My boss, my manager, the amount of people. I walked in on one person in the bathroom. There was one girl that was so out of her mind. She's tried to she did steal someone's truck and then tried to mow down people standing out back smoking, which, by the way, we went out back to smoke because they were so kind for this. So we used to have to go completely across the highway, and our call center is next to this trap hotel, right? The ambulance and police were there all the time. Well, there was a few women that were across the road smoking, and then this van pulled up and shoved 2 women into it and made it somewhat down the road, and somehow they were able to get out. Did they call the police? Did they do anything about it? Absolutely not. You know what they did? They just moved our smoking section to the back of the building where all of the unhoused community would come out of the woodwork literally and harass us and everything else. Like, it was such a bad situation. That leads me to my next thing. They did not want us helping or going above or beyond at all. We were trained to answer only the question that was asked and nothing more. There was a man, I used to get calls like this all the time, but this one was really rough. But this man called me with Lou Gehrig's, just beyond devastated because he could not afford it. The doctor was adamant on him needing the name brand because, again, kickbacks. For the people that think that doctors don't get kickbacks, you'll figure it out one day. But the guy was like, I cannot afford this. We ended up finding him an alternative. It was like $20, XYZ. I got in so much trouble for this. The man sent me flowers to thank me. I got in so much trouble for this that I was taken off of all of my special projects, the escalation line, everything, because I went against my training and helped this man. And the final thing, my ex, he was my boss, but we began a relationship, and he was very abusive to me, on top of the fact that I found out he was sleeping with half the team and married to one of them. But that's a story for a different day. And when I finally went forward about that, they did not have my back at all. They had his completely, because he was the boss and a man, right? And they started watching every little thing I did. Actually, my manager got one of my teammates to start monitoring every time I came to work, every time I left, my lunch, and if I was even a fraction of a second late, they gave me a half of an occurrence because they were trying to get me out the door because for attendance or whatever reason they could, because they wanted to keep their precious manager who was rug dealing to employees and sleeping with them. So, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Don't even get me started on all the ways they would beat the regulations and screw people over and everything else. Like, and on top of that, just an honorable mention, I would dare to say that 95% of the employees were either on rugs or on anti-anxiety and antidepressants, because that job drove us that crazy. Like, I cannot wait till the stories come out about this company, because it is far more than just your run-of-the-mill insurance schemes.
I'm rarely speechless, but that's pretty extraordinary. And I want to be clear, there's no part of this story or anything about it in which anything that happened to Brian Thompson is condoned. Not at all. We can't live in a vigilante assassination America. Not at all. That's not about this. This story is about where we're headed as a country, because you hear all of the cabinet picks and all of the pundits surrounding Donald Trump talking about disruption and tearing things down and changing everything. Well, what if they take away the Department of Consumer Affairs? If America becomes a true corporate oligarchy society, which we pretty much are right now, understand that what happens is we certainly no longer would care about customers, nor do we care about employees. And you've got to put this out to every single person you know. Have them watch this so they understand what we are potentially facing with this incoming administration. This is why it's so important, and why I finish a lot of my videos with stay frosty.